Hey y'all, guess what? Doors are open April 17th through the 25th for the Hustle Humbly community.
We do monthly lives where you can watch us do our podcast recordings, happy hours, book clubs, mini fun lessons. We also have a private Facebook group. We do giveaways. One of my personal favorites is the Hustle Humbly Community Referral Network.
Yeah, if you need an agent somewhere else, you need to know who knows what they're doing.
Right. Who follows the Hustle Humbly ways?
That's right.
We also do some resources like extra email templates and guides and prospecting templates.
You get the full prospecting template pack, which will help you speak to those prospects or maybe your database to get some new business.
And then our April live will be on the 20th, and it's all about
staging.
Yay!
In May, we're going to set ourselves up for a successful summer. And in June, we're back to book club and we're reading Never Split the Difference.
I'm really excited about this
Very
book.
exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, find out more and join us at hustlehumblypodcast.com/membership.
I can see my buyer deflating.
Like, wow.
Welcome to marriage.
Like, you're going to have to do
You're
that.
gonna have to do that. I understand. Any hidden passageways? Any evidence of someone living
there?
What? I'm very confused. Are you blind? Not with me.
Wait. Oh my word. What? Wow. Well, let's end on that.
Sorry. Hi, y'all. Welcome to Hustle Humbly. It's Alyssa and Katie, and we are two top producing realtors in the Baton Rouge market.
We work for two different companies where we should be competitors, but we have chosen community over competition.
The goal of our podcast is to encourage you to find your own way in business.
So stop comparing yourself and start embracing your strengths. Hi, Alyssa.
Hey, Katie.
How are you today?
Just fine.
We are giggly right now.
We are. Which is not good because we're kind of doing a somber topic.
That's true. So this is episode 193, Handling Difficult Deals. And I made a second title called When It's Over, It's Over.
Oh.
But you'll understand why in a minute. Not about the first two things, but about the last thing. Regardless, we need a little giggle on the front end because it is going to get a bit serious.
Right.
And of course, we're going to handle this delicately, even though we have the giggles. In real estate, there are lots of transactions that you come across that aren't just happy and puppies and rainbows and roses, and people are selling or buying for maybe unpleasant circumstances.
Sure.
Okay, so how do we handle difficult deals? Should I read the
Yeah, why don't you read what sparked this episode for us?
So we're kind of take this in a couple of directions while we're in the show. But Sarah, a listener, sent us this request. And this is what she said. How do you handle difficult deals? Had a cash buyer come to closing $16,000 short. When your buyers buy a home, they soon realize has a lot of problems and have to put a lot of money into it and hate it. This has happened for my last two transactions.
Ugh.
Anxiety and guilt when a buyer cancels a contract. Even worse, without proper cause and their escrow deposit is then jeopardized. Dealing with that this week. She was having a rough go.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, thank you for the request because lots of transactions are difficult and for all different sorts of reasons. So, what do you think?
I appreciated about her message is because when I was new, I found that so often when I was doing my 1 month after closing check-in or 2 months, they were often had something negative to say.
Right.
Even if it wasn't all negative, like, oh my gosh, we love the house. Yeah, we did have to get a new AC, but other than that, it's going real. And I just always had trouble hearing the negative things.
Did you internalize that?
I think so.
Me too.
And I'm like, oh no, I hope that
They're
they
mad at
don't
me.
blame me for this.
Right.
And so I got to the point where I was nervous sometimes to check in and see how things were going. Like I didn't want to know.
No,
don't tell me.
It's better if we don't know.
Yeah. And so I went through a few years where I just didn't ask.
Now, you develop kind of like you just develop a thicker skin over time. I still feel bad for my client if something bad happens after they buy a house or even if they sell a house and regret it. I still feel bad. I still sympathize and empathize with them. But I think I'm less afraid and maybe I understand now the steps to take when they start down that path instead of being like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? Well, you can't fix it.
No.
It's already happened. You can assist in what they're going through. Like I have clients right now that are dealing with a house that's only 3 years old that they bought through me. And it has this big, stucco issue with the leaking wall, and they're having to rebuild the whole front of their house. And so I was like, well, here's a water, remediation person.
Mhm.
Here's maybe someone you can check in with to find out about your home warranty, like your new home warranty act. Like here's a title. Here is actually a real estate attorney if you need that. Like, so
Right.
just give them, what you can as far as support, but you
Mhm.
can't fix that stuff.
And it's not your fault.
It's not your fault that no house is perfect. And if you listen to the episode 2 ago, where we go through the due diligence period, you want to set them up during your transaction to understand the house isn't perfect now. It's not going to be perfect forever. There are going to be problems. Being a homeowner comes with great reward, comes great responsibilities.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going to be a homeowner, like these things are going to happen, but you can have empathy and listen and try to help them, go in the right direction to fix, but you can't internalize that.
Right. And I think you made a good point that setting the expectations the right way
Yeah.
and understanding how to deal with things. Because I do think people's first thing is to point the finger of the previous owner knew this. Like,
Right.
no, I mean, they
No.
likely didn't,
Right.
depending on what it is.
And a lot of times I have to point out to them the rules of engagement. Okay, fine. Let's say they did know. This is what happens now. You have to sue them for fraud.
Right.
Then you have to prove that they knew, which
Mhm.
isn't exactly an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, it might seem like they knew, or you're going to be like, oh, obviously they knew. How would you not know? You'd have to have proof that they knew. So
Mhm.
it really is kind of like and we have as-is transactions that's almost all of our transactions here. When you buy at closing, you're taking the property as is. There's no going back to the seller in a year or 2 years or 3 years, but that was the law before. You had 3 years, remember?
That's insane to
3
me.
years to be like, hey, take this back. It's broken. This one's broken.
Right.
I don't want it anymore.
No.
So I think it's important for your buyers to understand during the transaction that that's the case. And then you'll have less of these feelings afterwards where they're like, what do you mean I can't get the seller to fix the AC? We just moved in a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but that's not how any of this works. And that's why we take the inspection period so seriously. That's why we take the walkthrough so seriously.
Right.
We have to be there. We have to do those things because after closing,
That's it.
it's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you tell us what would you consider a difficult deal just generally off the top of your head if you were picking difficult deals?
I have found successions can be tricky if the heirs are not all in agreement.
Right.
Selling the family home
Yeah,
is
it's
always
emotional.
really hard.
Right.
And I always, because my parents live in the house that they built before I was born. So every time I am meeting someone, I have this like future vision of one day I might have to sell the family home. And I see myself in their position.
Right. Or like even your grandmother's home.
I know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, she lives right next door.
Mhm.
It's like our little,
You're like family compound.
It is.
Right. So that one is toughie.
And then just dealing with the situations that people are in, if it's a negative situation as to why they are selling,
Right.
financial reasons,
Yeah.
they can no longer afford their house or
They've lost a job.
lost a job. I mean, divorce. There's just so many
Right.
things.
Or even just like one of the spouses has passed away, not even like
right.
a full-on succession. It's children or someone has inherited it.
Mhm.
But what if only one person has passed away and the other can't stay there anymore?
Right.
Either they can't take care of the house, they can't afford it, whatever the case may be. You really have to handle those transactions differently
Mhm.
and delicately.
Right.
It's all the D's, for your deaths and your divorce, you need to be delicate,
Right.
And, really listen.
And as much as we would love to have content for Instagram and make these really pretty posts, sometimes it's just
No,
not the situation for that.
no,
It's just
right,
a sad
right.
thing.
Like, we have to respect what's going on in their life.
Right.
Yes, you got paid, but that might have to be it.
Right.
Like
Right.
we're not looking to celebrate number 3 transaction for this month.
Yeah.
No.
Woohoo.
I did make a quick list of tips for handling difficult or delicate emotional transactions like a death or divorce.
Okay.
Would you like to hear them?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, remember to listen. Just listen. When you're dealing with people who are emotional, they need to talk it out. They need someone to hear them. They need to say maybe things that are illogical but are emotionally based, and you just listen. We don't need to do anything but that. Number 2, have empathy. So picture like you are.
Yeah.
Picture yourself on that path. Like how would you feel? What would you want your agent to do? Like what would you need from someone and remember, you're a professional. We don't have to make them happy, better. Sometimes in these cases, no matter what you do, they're upset. Right? You can't do anything right, it feels like. It's not about you.
Right.
They're having a whole nother situation going on. Number 3, communicate delicately. So be mindful of how you deliver messages. Like if you're sending a repair request with 1,000 things on it to the house of their mother who's just passed away and they love the house and they grew up there and nothing is wrong with it in their eyes, you got to frame this delivery of this message somehow.
Right.
Like maybe you don't just send it straight up. Maybe you want to call and have a talk and, ease them into it. You're going to have to do a lot of easing into things, to make sure they're okay. This one is for divorce and honestly for secession. Number 4 is speak to all parties equally. You cannot pick, if the wife hired you, not the husband. 2 people are selling that house. If 2 people are selling that house, you better give every single message to 2 people. And my other tip on this is don't do it in a group text. Sometimes in a divorce that's not going so well, they don't want to be communicating
with each other
together. They don't want to be communicating together. So you've got to send a cut and paste of the same thing both ways, right? Both emails, both texts, whatever you're doing.
Together, but separate.
2 people get the phone call. 2 people are making if 2 people had to sign your listing documents, 2 people need all of the communication.
Right.
Remember, and I've lost many a listing where one party wanted to hire me, but the other did not, and they just put their foot down and they had to hire the other party's agent. You will lose deals because in a divorce, someone's going to say, I want my agent, right? Maybe sometimes that's you.
I even have a good situation right now where that's happening because I sold this young guy his first house. And he's lived there for 3 years and he called me and was like, hey, I'm getting married. I need your help listing it. So I sent him all my stuff and we were discussing and I checked in with him. I was like, hey, let me know when you're ready for a walkthrough. And he said, well, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but my fiance had already called her realtor.
Right.
And that's she wants to use her. And I'm like, welcome to marriage.
You're going to have to do
You're going to have to do that. I understand. I'll keep it in mind. But yeah, I just thought it was funny.
So it's true. There's 2 parties. Someone's making the choice. If you are the agent who got that listing but weren't the one that the other party wanted, you need to treat them very well.
Right.
Because they already don't trust you if they don't trust their spouse. If something like that's going on, they don't trust you. They don't want to hear it from you.
I've been in situations where it was a divorce situation and the wife still occupied the home and the husband had moved out. They were in dispute about what agent to use. And the wife said, we can, per our divorce attorney, you have 4 months. And if it doesn't sell in 4 months, we will switch to his realtor.
Wow.
I said, okay.
No pressure.
Right. And luckily it worked out, but it just made me realize okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did. I tried to really, I've always said, no matter what, if I have a listing that expires or gets withdrawn, my goal is always to treat them in a way that when they have the next realtor, they miss me.
That's a good goal.
Even if I didn't sell the house, at least now you realize that
you did a good job.
I did a good job. I was communicating with you. I was transparent. So that was my goal.
Okay, I like that.
More though than to even sell the house.
Right.
Was just to do the best I could.
Do the good job. Okay, I have one more on handling these be aware, and this really goes with communication, be aware of who is legally in charge of this sale. And that is who you should be. So in a succession, many times, what are there? 2, 3, 5, 6 siblings. There is someone who is typically in charge, right? And is able to sign a loan. If it's not, and you have to get 6 signatures, then you got to talk to 6 people. But a lot of times there is a person who's in charge, right? So I have a story for you.
Okay.
I did a listing last year. Very, very nice family. It was actually a past client who had moved away. Well, it was a referral-ish. She was one of the siblings, but she was still far away. And there was a sibling locally as the parent. The mother's home. The mother passed away. The sibling in charge was the executor of the will. So they were the buck stops here. Like, we sign. But there were 2 sisters here, and the one that I had worked with was away. When I went to do the first walk through the pre-listing, the 2 sisters were there along with the brother who was handling the deal. They all had, things to tell me. I wrote it all down. I addressed them all. You look them all in the eye. You listen to their opinion. You take it all in. And then, they go on their way. We make decisions to do some renovations, okay? Because it was going to make them way more money if they just put the money in to renovate and then sell it. And they had the money to do that in the estate. It's going to feel in these situations like there are a lot of chiefs, right? Like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They all want their say. They all equally own it, but only one person legally has to sign. Well, they all knew who I was and how to find me. Oh, yes, that's right. They would contact me by text, by email, by phone, it could be any one of them at any moment, and be like, hey, I really don't love that shutter color. I'm like, okay, well, we've all agreed to this and we're just going to keep on rolling, right?
Right.
Or I would get a text from one the day we listed, when will you be doing the first open house?
Oh, gosh.
Although in the listing, I've already talked with the main party and been like, we're not doing that. And this is why, or this is when we would. But now I'm having to relay that information. Basically, I'm having to sell myself and my system to another party, even though I already have the listing. I could have just been like, delete, ignore. I don't want to talk to you. I tried to just be respectful and respond as best I could. And they were fine. And it sold and everything went well. But they're not easy transactions.
No.
There's more pieces and parts and people with opinions, and you have to just navigate it.
I had a succession situation. It was the family home, and it was 3 siblings. And one of them felt like she was owed more.
Why?
Because she did so much for the parents towards the end with appointments and things like that. She kind of felt like she was more available.
Right.
And in some ways, it didn't necessarily make her a better person. It's just that she was the only one that did not work.
Right.
So she was available, whereas the other 2 had very strict jobs and did what they could. It wasn't that they loved the parents less. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And this house was like $900,000. It was a big house. And at the closing, after like whatever the final number was divided by 3, there was an extra penny.
Did she get the penny?
They actually had a discussion about it.
About the penny?
About it, yes.
About who's getting this penny?
Get it because she should get the bigger share because she did the most.
Wow.
And I just sat there going, wow. And it's really funny because I follow like this toddler page about like, just communicating with toddlers and how the toddler melted down because they asked for a banana and the mom peeled the banana and gave it. And the toddler like had a complete meltdown.
Right.
Because they wanted to peel the banana.
Yeah, this is
And the whole point that she made was it was never about the banana.
Right.
It's about the toddler's perception and they want to be able to have some independence. And same situation. It wasn't about the penny. But to her,
she needed them to say, yes, you can have this penny.
Right.
You did do more.
She wanted that acknowledgement. And when I tell you, it was not just a quick discussion. Like the title attorney was like, I'm going to be right back. And when I come back, we'll see, where y'all have made it in this discussion. And so ultimately she got the penny, which it wasn't about the penny, but just goes to show.
She needed that penny.
I guess so.
All right. That makes perfect sense.
You win.
Though. Right. You got it. You won.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We've acknowledged. Do you have any other any other stories that would apply? Because these are not necessarily good stories.
I actually, when I was preparing for this episode, I felt like I had more stories than information.
Great.
One of my first, I was on phone duty, and this was in my early years of real estate, and I got a call from this guy. I didn't really like him. He wasn't very nice to me.
Right.
And he wanted to see this house, and I was like, okay, So I show him the house, and he tells me that he's buying because he's getting a divorce. So I'm like, okay, I still don't think you have to be rude, but I'm sorry that you're going through that.
You're going through something.
So I helped him buy, and then he surprised me at the closing table because I didn't know him that well.
Right.
Just through this one transaction, I didn't know him before. And at the closing table, he said, well, I guess I need you to come look at our house since, that one will have to be sold too because my ex-wife is moving somewhere else. So I was like, oh, okay. So he bought, and then I sold the house that they lived in.
Okay.
And then I met the wife a few times when they were exchanging children. Sometimes she came straight to the house we were at and they did the exchange. So I met her, and then she was kind. And then she called me to buy.
Wow.
Thought that was very interesting. Very interesting. They co-parented well together. They still
good.
They had such a good relationship that they got back together.
I could feel this coming.
They had such a good relationship that they got back together. Okay. So at this point, I've had 3 real estate transactions.
Okay.
Wait, they both bought and I sold the home.
You didn't have to sell their individual homes for them to get back together?
So I did. So then I sold their individual homes, and they bought one together again.
Wow.
Okay. And then a few years later.
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
Dang it.
I know. So she stayed in the home I sold.
Okay.
And he bought a new one.
Oh, my.
And then 2 years later, I sold that one, and she bought. So now they are independent. But just so you know, because I've been tallying this, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 transactions. And from this sweet, tumultuous
I think they could have avoided quite a few of them with some therapy, maybe.
Yeah. Now, I will say, in all of my pride, they came out well on all of them.
Okay. All right, great.
It was a good real estate investment.
Financially,
things were fine.
Perfect.
They came out ahead. They made money on all the houses I sold.
They were never really unhappy with the real estate
They were always in a bad mood. Well, they weren't in a bad mood the
middle.
2 times, that we bought together. But yes, the other times it was like, okay, well, things aren't going well.
Were they embarrassed to reach out to you the last time when they were like, guess what?
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Right.
Dang it.
I know.
That's crazy.
I think we had I kind of called him on his bluff. He was kind of dry and sarcastic, which I don't mind at all. And so I was kind of dry and sarcastic back. So I think he had no shame to call me and be like, I know you're not going to be surprised, but
oh, no.
we just had a good relationship. Okay. And then he was like, she's going to call you later to tell you what she needs.
All right.
Like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I know. But they're both pretty settled now. So I think it's over. It's been a few years since I've heard.
Great. I'm glad, I guess, that it worked. They're happy now.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a story.
Okay.
So when we were preparing for this episode, we didn't want to just spend the whole time talking about sad, terrible things or reasons why you're having a difficult deal. But we also needed to talk about some things that happen when you buy, just like Sarah's message, and the buyers are not happy, right? Things come up, things don't go well. End of the transaction goes very poorly. But I have a specific story that plays into when it's over is the title. And when I say when it's over is that when the transaction closes, this is done.
Right.
You own the house. There's no going back. It's over. I had a listing. I'm going to try and make this as brief as I can. I feel like I may have told parts of the story before. I had a listing. It was actually my sister-in-law at the time, not my sister-in-law anymore. But anyway, she's selling her house. Okay. She's moving. She lists it, gets a buyer. Everything's great. It's an RD loan.
The buyer's getting an RD loan,
Yes.
and you have her house listed.
Correct. RD means rural development. It's a 100% loan. At that time, years ago, they were taking a very long time.
Yes, I remember.
It could be months,
Right, 3
depending on
months.
how far behind that office was. Okay. Well, in the shuffle of things, or in just the buyer's agent's negligence, they never told us where they were at with RD. My seller packed it all up. Her apartment wasn't going to be ready for 2 weeks. So she has to pack her things, put them into storage, go live with a friend to be out for closing. 2 days before closing, so this is obviously pre-TRID.
Right.
2 days before closing, the agent, the agent doesn't reach out to me. I reach out to the agent and I say, hey, when are y'all going to do that final walkthrough? She's actually out already. And they're like, oh, no, we're going to have to do an extension. The file just went to RD. And I went, wait, hold up.
Just went.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, RD was like 20 days behind. I'm like, well, that means we're at least 3 to 4 weeks out of closing.
So you knew this.
And you knew.
Oh,
but
gosh.
you didn't tell me. And she was like, yeah, what of it? We need the extension. She didn't care. And I was like, oh my. And I'm like, here's the problem. During the inspection, we had negotiated $500 towards repairs.
Okay.
And I said, listen, my seller has bought, moved, had to pay for storage, is living on the couch of a friend, and would have been ecstatic to give you a 3 or 4 week extension because it would have worked out timing wise. Only move once, live in your house until you go to your next place. Hurrah! I said, she needs to be compensated.
Right.
I don't have to sign this extension. She needs to be compensated.
Right.
So I said, why don't we just wash this $500 in repairs? You don't get your $500. It's basically like she's keeping $500 to pay for her second move. All is well. Agent says, okay, fine. This is where I made a mistake. I sent over in the same email the extension signed by my seller and the addendum showing we removed the repairs.
Oh.
And in my, I will admit, negligence, when she sent back the signed extension, I just didn't even realize they didn't sign the addendum intentionally.
Right. She's like, oh, look, they already signed the extension.
She was very
so dirty,
sketchy and dirty and fraud. She said to me, yeah, all right, fine, we'll do that. Just, whatever. And then chose not to, they did not sign. Okay. Well, here's where the story is very much filled with karma. At closing, the agent did not attend, nor did she send a representative.
Okay.
And clearly did not check the settlement statement prior to closing.
Okay.
On the settlement statement, the $500 for repairs were not reflected.
Wow.
Well, that was correct in accordance to what we agreed to.
Right.
And I said, okay, fine.
Yeah. You're like, here's the email.
Great.
Where
no
we just-
problem.
Yeah.
We sign. Done's done. The buyer's there. They sign. Everything's done. Okay. And in an RD, I think a lot like an FHA, there's a document that says, have all the terms of the purchase agreement been met?
Right.
And everyone signs. Beyond the fact that the closing is the end and it's over, right? Not within an hour of closing, the agent is texting me, hey, where's that $500 for repairs? And I'm like,
wow.
What do you mean? We agreed to let that go because my seller had to move out prematurely. And we agreed that would be the way we would compensate her. And she said, we never signed that addendum. I said, well, you said you were going to sign the addendum.
And nobody was at closing.
And nobody said anything at closing, and done's done.
Right.
And she texted me for 2 full days in a very harassing manner, saying she's going to sue me.
Do it.
Her client needed the money. We agreed to this. It was in writing. But the funny thing to me was you tried to trick me, and karma got you.
Right.
Because you didn't show up to closing and look at that settlement statement. Now, I don't even want to think about how difficult that closing would have been if she had showed and said, we want it. We never signed that. And then we had to fight back and forth because at the end of the day, I'd have had to eat that because I didn't have the signed addendum. They didn't sign the addendum.
Right.
But she wasn't there.
That is very
and
interesting.
the end is the end. And I checked with a title attorney too. And they were like, nope. The end's the end.
Right. They can't come back.
They said that that's fine. They signed.
Mm-hmm.
And the buyer was probably a first-time buyer or someone who wasn't aware, like didn't think you don't get money outside of closing.
Right.
And they were like, called their agent after, where's our $500? And she's like, oh, let me get that for you.
About that. If you're enjoying the Hustle Humbly podcast, we could use your help. We are trying to get some new reviews. Please head over to the show notes and click the link to leave us some new reviews at ratethispodcast.com/hustlehumbly.
And if you're on Spotify, you need to follow, hit the bell, rate the show, and leave a comment on the current episode. And for our YouTube friends, like, subscribe, and hit that bell.
Thanks for all your support.
Have you had any other like walkthrough issues, or I mean, I know there are some, or closing issues where you were having a difficult transaction and maybe you got to the walkthrough and y'all had to come up with some creative way to get to closing? I mean, surely.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I had an agent not do a walkthrough. I had the listing, and in the MLS description, I had written, washer and dryer can remain at buyer's request.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were very old.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think anybody would want them.
Mm-hmm.
So sure enough, we got a purchase agreement and it was not on the purchase agreement. So when my sellers were moving out, they were like, hey, what do we do with our washer dryer? We like tried to sell them on Facebook.
Nobody wanted them.
Nobody wanted them.
It was a hassle.
Yes. And I said, well, the buyers don't want them. So we do have to remove them because if they are bringing their own, they don't want to have to. And she was like, okay, so they put them at the street. So we went to closing, and an hour after closing, I get a frantic call from the agent. Where is the washer and dryer? And I screenshotted her I said, you never asked for the washer and dryer. You said it was staying. I said, it could stay if the buyer wanted it, but you did not ask for it. It has to be in the contract.
Right.
She had to buy her buyers a washer and dryer.
And for the record, the ones that there were literal garbage.
Yeah. Like they couldn't sell them for $200 and she had to spend like $600 of her own money.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so many situations. People just take things they don't know or they do know and take them anyway. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that could happen.
Yeah, I've had to eat commission at closing just like Sarah said, where she had a buyer come in short without money.
What? I've never had that happen.
You've
Knock
never
on wood. Never.
That's not wood. You've never had someone not have the money. I've actually
never.
So y'all, for people who maybe now in this environment are starting to see it be a little, it's not even anything like it, but I was here during like the crash.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of short sales and a lot of foreclosures and a lot of people who maybe weren't even doing a short sale, but would be upside down on what they owed. Okay.
Right.
And the seller wouldn't even realize they were going to have to come to closing with $3,000 or $4,000 or $16,000. Like she's talking about a buyer. That makes sense. But a seller who then found out the day before closing, you need $3,000. Y'all, it's paying the commission.
Mm-hmm.
Their loan was going to be paid off.
Right.
There's been a time or two where I was just like, take it out of mine. That's the only way to do it. Or
Why?
you don't close.
Oh.
Or like you can get
Why did they not know that they needed to bring money?
Alyssa. Because their agent never did a net sheet with them, never told them what to expect, never had them, get with the title company on their numbers before closing. I don't think that new agents realize the wondrous power of that 3-day TRID law.
It was so bad before it was here.
It was like the Wild West.
It was horrendous. I hated closing.
You could be in the parking lot at closing and they'd be like, you can go. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen today.
You could be on stand.
Maybe tomorrow.
You know how you say you're not an emergency room doctor? Back in those days, you had to be on call. Like maybe we'll close, maybe we won't.
Like we got the package. Can you be here in 20 minutes?
I never, title office employees were constantly sweating and running around like crazy people because exactly that. The package shows up 10 minutes before closing. We can do this. We'll make it happen.
Right.
Now it's like, you don't make the 3-day cutoff. That's it. Mm-hmm. You can't close. So those are wild ones. Did you have an attic story. Was this a death in an attic?
I had a situation where it was a foreclosure.
Uh-huh.
And my buyer was purchasing it.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there for the home inspection, the neighbor came over and explained that the person that lived here before was hauled off to a mental institution.
Okay.
Because she swore someone lived in the attic. And that there was noises and this.
Right.
I can see my buyer like deflating.
Like, wow.
So I go to the home inspector. I'm like, hey, I really need you to check the attic.
Like hard.
Hard. Any like hidden passageways, any evidence of a person, of someone living there. So ultimately, my buyer decided to buy the house as a joke, but we really not as a joke. We at the final walkthrough, I surprised him and I brought a priest. And we had the home blessed.
Okay.
It was I did it like laughing, but at the same time,
just
we
in
really
case.
need it.
we don't know who's in the attic.
It was very interesting. And so then the week of him living there the first time, it's like 10 o'clock at night and I get this text and it's like a recording. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
And you hear these noises.
Oh my God.
In the attic.
Well, the blessing didn't work.
They don't work on squirrels.
Oh, it was a squirrel.
And he could come and go.
So whenever people would go, nothing would be there.
Right.
Oh my word.
So yeah, I mean,
okay, that one was special.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a list of things you can't do after closing.
Oh.
Okay, and here's how I feel like this relates to the difficult deals. You know, if you're dealing with a difficult seller or buyer, someone who's maybe not so nice, good news, when it's over, it's over. You don't have to be friends anymore.
Right.
So here's
not everybody needs to go on your database. If it was a client that you did not jive well with, they were rude, condescending, whatever, too needy, didn't match with you, don't put them on your database because you don't have to follow up with them anymore.
Don't follow up with them anymore. We talk about this in the course because if you put them on there or you have people like that on your database, it will cause you to not want to work with, like to not get in your database and contact people. You'll be like, ooh, I don't want to because I'm avoiding those people. Just don't put those people on there.
Right.
Only put people you actually want to talk to. Okay, so here's some things you can't do after closing in case anyone needs a reminder. Check repairs or get receipts for repairs.
Too late.
You got to do a walkthrough, and maybe one day we'll do a whole walkthrough episode, but you got to do a walkthrough. You got to have this stuff before. You can't do an additional inspection after closing. The ship has sailed.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't ask for monies after closing. You can't realize you didn't get some type of... It's too late. If the closing costs weren't on the settlement statement on the CD and you didn't see it, too bad.
Right.
It's done is done. I had that happen too.
Like the closing costs weren't there?
It was actually the commission. The one and only actual lease purchase that I did from beginning to end, where I put my buyer into a lease purchase. The way it was worked out was a portion of the real estate, because it was listed by an agent. Basically, a portion of the commissions were paid up front. They had a 2-year lease period, and then they had to buy, and then a portion of commissions were going to be paid at closing. Well, I guess the way the listing agent had talked to their seller, they hadn't made it very clear. And they also did not show up to closing. So here's, you got to go to closing and you got to check your settlement statements. He was calling me after closing like, hey, the seller didn't realize that they had this much commission left to pay and it only went on your side, and he thought he was paying both of us. And I'm like, but it was the right amount. Like it was the MLS agreed upon amount. So I got the amount I was supposed to be paid. That you didn't get paid is kind of between you and your seller.
Right.
Because that's not how it was on the settlement statement. That's not how it was in the MLS. And I didn't get extra paid. I just got paid. The seller just was like, that's all I owe.
Right.
And the agent tried to convince me to give him back part of the commission. And I was like, he's like, I got kids, I'm like, yep, same here. So I'm going to just hang on to this.
Right.
because I did the work.
Because something happened on the listing side where a mistake was made.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I'm like, oh my word. So you can't get money after closing. I will say, if you're having a walkthrough issue, like let's just say it's pretty small. I had one that wasn't very small, but we handled it. The pool is part of the sale. It's a pool in the backyard. It's a great pool. When we looked at the house, blue. When we did the inspection, blue. When we went to the walkthrough, green.
Okay.
The pool is no longer swimmable. It looks like a lagoon. We're like, I don't know what's happening here. Seller shows up to the, actually the agent then shows up to the walkthrough and is like, I don't know. It's fine. Everything's fine. The seller fixed a piece. It'll be blue in 2 days. I'm like, but it's not blue now.
Right.
You didn't tell us you had to fix something, and it's closing in like just a few hours. And so my buyer isn't comfortable buying a house that he's not sure if the pool works.
Right.
So what are we going to do? You want to get an inspector over here to look at it? Basically, a very angry seller, not my client, the other one, was like, we agreed to get a pool guy over and look at it, and it was going to be $250 for him to do what he needed to do, and he basically guaranteed it would be working again. So I'm like, we need $250. And the seller was like, I don't want to give you $250. I'm like, you're going to have to. And then the agent was like, he doesn't have to. And I'm like, well, then you give me $250. And he was like, well, I don't want to. I'm like, then get your seller to do it.
Right.
Because someone's going to make the pool right. You have to. He said the contract doesn't say anything about the water in the pool. He tried to make it sound like the water in the pool didn't have to be
same or better condition.
That's what I said. Here are the lines where it says the house has to be in the same or better condition. The pool was blue. Now it's green. That's not the same or better condition. Finally, the seller agreed to it. He was so awful in the closing that the very kind title attorney hurried him through and kicked him out.
Wow.
Because he was like, this is unacceptable. Like his behavior was so bad. Okay, but those are things you can't do after closing.
Also, if you listen to 2 episodes ago where I talked about I had the listing and after closing, the buyers found termites. The buyer's agent called me and wanted me to fix the problem. It was his job at that time to explain to the buyer that the seller and the seller's agent did nothing wrong here.
Right.
This was a hidden thing that nobody would have seen otherwise.
Right.
There's no fraud. So we have absolutely nothing to call the sellers about.
Right.
If the roles had been reversed and this would have happened to my buyer, I never would have called the listing agent.
Because there's nothing to be done.
There's nothing to say. It just
Right.
makes you look silly. Like you don't understand
How it works. That's not how it works.
So there are just things that once you sign, it is what it is.
I know. I have one last story about this. Okay. I had the sweetest retired couple that were moving here to be close to a grandchild. And they had a home where they were coming from that was actually under contract. So they had gotten it under contract after we found a house. 2 houses are under contract. The one they're buying, the one they're selling. Things are going well on both ends. The day before our inspection, the spouse passes away, okay, of my clients. So we cancel the inspection. We cancel the purchase. We're like, we can't move forward. Obviously, we have to, she had to deal with the death on the other end. Well, we had a deposit, but we were within our inspection period. So whether we had an inspection or not, we could have canceled. It's fine.
Right.
Legally, we were fine. The seller of the house that we were buying did not want to give the deposit back. I'm like, well, that just makes you look really bad. This poor person has lost her spouse unexpectedly, obviously.
Yeah.
And you want to hang on to her, a couple $1,000.
And it's not like it's the day before closing.
No.
Like this is still very early on. Within your right. You have a contractual right.
Right. And the agent, who obviously was dealing with that difficult seller, was like, I'm very sorry. I can't believe he's even saying this. We will figure it out. And then we did get the deposit back. But the other part of this that I wanted to share is that my client, she still had to sell her house because it was under contract. And the seller doesn't have an out unless I mean, like, she couldn't get out of the deal. She had to sell it. So she sold the house and went and lived with a friend, and then eventually did come here to buy. And we shopped for a different kind of house because it was only going to be her, and things had changed. And those were hard showings.
Mm-hmm.
She was very emotional. We spent an hour in a house while she cried with her daughters, and we looked at that. Like, it was emotionally draining. She is one of my dearest clients, and I love her very much, but you just don't know.
Right.
Even when things are going great and everything's wonderful, bad things can happen mid-transaction, and you have to figure out how to deal with those things. It's just, it can be really hard.
Right.
Because people are so emotional about these types of things, and on top of that, trying to move. So I think that, everyone probably has a story like that.
Have you had a client that expressed their displeasure with working with you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
For sure.
So hard.
Right. Like, I don't want you to do this anymore. I'm like, we're under contract, so you can't fire me now.
We're here now.
Right. Like, we don't have to talk. Maybe I don't want to talk to you.
I had a seller that I did not realize they were going through divorce. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell me that's what was happening.
Okay.
They were still living there. He was away a lot for work. I did not realize their kids were grown.
Yeah.
It was not on my radar at all.
You didn't think about it,
that
right.
they were going through a divorce. But he was just very rude to me and counted down the days till he could fire me.
You. Yeah.
Even though I did more open houses and more everything for them, it didn't matter. He would be like, how much longer until the contract is expired?
You're like,
how much
wow.
longer? And it was just like there was nothing I could do to make them happy.
Right.
I also had a situation with a seller from another country, and she came off as very cold, but I feel like I won her over and gained her trust. And then we got under contract fairly quickly, and through inspections, and then the house didn't appraise.
Okay.
And she did not take that well, and just totally blamed me. And we ended up doing what we had to do.
Right.
And we closed. And then after closing, she got my after closing email template.
Oh, God.
And it did ask in that one for sellers, like, hey, please send me your new address so I can add you to my my client list. And she was like, I am not giving you my new address.
No way.
And I was like,
okay.
What? And she was like, I am just so unsatisfied with the service that you provided me. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay. And
I'm sorry.
She said, when it didn't appraise, you should have told them that they no longer got the refrigerator. And I'm going, you didn't want the refrigerator.
Right. What are you talking about?
You told me it would stay with the house because you didn't want to move it. And then they asked for it and you gave it willingly. Well, I didn't know at that time the house wasn't going to appraise and I could have sold it. I'm like, okay, I don't want you on my database.
That's okay.
So I don't need your address. Just don't leave me a 1-star review.
All right.
Thank you. Goodbye. Sometimes it's just...
let them go. Sometimes
man.
you just got to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else with a difficult deal you'd like to share?
I mean, how many stories do you want me to tell?
We could go on and on. Well, I mean, we don't want to be over the top on our time. You could tell one more if you have another good one. Do you have another good one?
Yeah.
Okay. I have one here, bats. Do you have a story about bats?
I had bats in my personal home.
Okay.
And I had a situation with a house that had bats.
Okay. Is that not what you want to tell me? Tell me a good one.
No, it wasn't on that one.
Do you have a good one that we need to get?
Okay. Yeah. So when I was newer, okay, y'all, there was a running joke in the office my first 2 years because I lived on phone duty and open houses. And I wasn't asking my sphere because I felt like I was too young and they were already I had a few tell me,
no, we're not going to do this.
So I was hurt and I'm never going to ask a friend or family to use me again.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was living on phone duty and, I got my 9 transaction call on phone duty. So that one paid off.
Okay.
This next one never paid off, but I learned a lot.
Oh, God.
It was this old man, and I have a soft spot for the
sweet.
seniors.
All right.
And he was so old. And he was like, I have got to sell my house.
Okay.
It is just, I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, can you tell me your address? And he's like, he tells me his address, and it's far away. It's like in Zachary.
you're like,
It was like 45 minutes from my house, but I'm like, I'll be right over. And he's like, okay, well, it's yellow and it has all these flowers and the flower beds, and you'll see this. And he's describing the house to me. And I pull up and I'm like, oh God. This what? I'm like very confused. Like, are you blind?
No flowers.
He was blind.
He was actually blind?
Uh-huh. Hadn't seen his house in 12 years.
Oh, my word.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It was yellow. It
at
did
one
have
point,
flowers.
Yes. Now it looks like a foreclosure that the bank forgot about.
Oh, my heavens.
Okay.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
I'm instantly feeling like, looking back, I cannot believe I went in. This could have been a bad situation.
Right.
But I didn't go in at first. I called him. I said, I think I'm here. I'm at the address you gave, but it
Okay.
is not the house you described. And I there's a car in the driveway, but I don't think it runs. Oh, sweetie, I haven't driven in so-and-so years because I'm blind. And I was like, oh, of course you are.
Sense.
Yes. Okay. Great. So I went in, and his wife was not in a good way. There was a hospital bed. There was hospital things. I'm not a medically inclined person. I made my middle sister come with me to get my shots all the way through college because I hate medical things.
Okay.
And I basically walked in, had to find him because he couldn't find me. I saw too much, and I was like, this is not going to work. And
You just told him this is not going to work?
this is not going to work. I said, we cannot sell the house while she is here in the home.
Right.
It could harm her if somebody trips over something. I said, and
Right.
it just doesn't make people feel, it's a very sad situation.
Right.
I know you can't see that, but I can. And it is sad. And we cannot sell the home with y'all living here. Well, we can't move until we sell. So what do we do? And I'm like, well, we're just going to have to figure this out. Do you have family? So we had to get family involved. And I did all this work. I had our dear friend that we had on the podcast, Nikki Beeson, the title attorney, drive with me out there to get him to legally fill out some forms because he was blind. It had to be in front of a witness, like legally.
Okay,
I
right.
can't say like I
Right.
took advantage of this man. I went to Zachary more times than I would have liked, and sometimes he would call me to ask me what time it was because he couldn't see. It was a bad situation.
Oh, wow.
And after I got all the kids involved to try to help the parents, apparently they didn't have a good relationship with the parents and had no sympathy. Okay. It was all around a bad situation, only for me to one day see shortly after that it was listed. Not with me.
Wait. Oh, my word. What?
One of the children was like,
I'll handle this.
and called his realtor, and she just listed it. And I was new, so I was upset. I needed that sale. I had spent countless hours, and because I cared, and
Right.
I hate to say it, this is the beginning of me stop caring.
This is
This is
when you made it a little more professional.
Yes, this is when I realized, oh, I need some boundaries in place. I can't like fix everyone. I can't overstep in certain ways, even if they need help. Like there's only so much you can do.
Right. Fair.
And when it took a long time, but it did close. And I called the agent after, and I was like, listen, I'm not calling to say like this was my client or anything. I'm actually calling to say like, is Mr. Nelson okay? Like, what happened? Can you tell me? And she was like, oh my gosh, this was like the saddest situation I've ever been in, blah, blah, blah. We were in the process of finding somewhere for them to go and she passed.
Okay.
So then in a way it made things a little easier because we just had to find him like an assisted living to get them out. And anyway, I will never forget what a mess of a story that was.
Right.
It was very... I did so much work for nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's end on that.
Sorry. This
so sad. I know.
Sad.
It is really sad.
But oh my God. If that would happen today, I would never have handled it the way I handled it then.
Right.
Not saying it was wrong for me to care because I would have helped if I could have, but I never even helped.
Right.
Like nothing I did mattered.
Right.
I never made it that far.
You didn't get that far.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, it was a noble effort. Let's call it that.
I learned a lot.
You learned
I really
a lot,
did. I
right?
learned about all sorts of things.
Right.
Like a mentally incapacitated seller.
Right.
What if they
you
are
learned
blind?
lots of legal information.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, well, that was a good learning
proper
lesson.
way.
Learning lessons are important.
You don't lose, you learn.
Right. There you go. There you go. Okay. I hope that we didn't, depress anyone today.
What was that episode where we got off on the tangent? Oh, the forever home myth.
With the coffins.
And we ended with talking about dying in your home in coffins. I feel like this kind of took the dark route too.
I mean, here's the sad truth of it. In real estate, you're dealing with people's lives, which may also include their deaths and divorces.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone needs shelter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until they don't.
Right.
Like, you're going to be involved in some people. You were like kind of appalled, amazed, but I've had quite a few deaths during transactions.
You were telling me. I haven't really had that many people die.
And you've done more transactions than me, but I'm like, I don't...
Maybe death just...
No, it's not that many. It's not that many.
Okay.
But I mean, I have had some.
I have not.
Or I've had a lot that were listings due to death, right? Like, I wasn't involved in the death. This one story I just told is the only death that happened during a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I've known other agents who's had quite a, it happens.
Right.
So when people post that, the seller posts, my house is sold and they just got a contract, I'm like, you're far from sold.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what's going to happen between now and closing.
Right.
Anything could happen. All right. Would you like a toast? Let's bring this up. Let's brighten it up.
Do we have any better stories we can end on?
Like a happy story about...
How do you find a happy
about
story?
difficult deals?
You're right. It's just meant to be a little bit of a downer.
Now, there are some difficult deals that it feels like you're solving a puzzle, like you're solving a problem, and then you work it out and everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had I don't know of a lot of uplifting, difficult deal stories.
Me neither.
I'm sorry to say.
I know. I was trying to...
You were like, maybe I can get one.
I can't think of anything.
No. I mean, no. Sorry. Sorry to say.
Okay. Let's toast.
Might as well. We need to just get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the deal. Leslie Clayman in Lubbock, Texas, and I think Leslie is in the community, is in Lubbock, Texas, and she wants to toast to Morgan Gates. Okay, so Morgan willingly answers all of my questions in text messages, even after switching brokerages. She has offered to let me shadow her. She has helped me price listings, and she always helps and encourages me. As a first-year young realtor, this help has been unbelievably appreciated. Cheers, Morgan.
That's really sweet.
So cheers to Morgan, and thank you to Leslie. Good. We needed to end on an up.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Thank
you for bringing up the mood.
Sorry.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
That's terrible.
So bad. We need something light and fluffy next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Hustle Humbly podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to ratethispodcast.com/hustlehumbly and leave us a review or drop a comment if you're listening on Spotify.
If you have an episode topic or someone you'd like to toast on the show, please email us at team@hustlehumblypodcast.com.
Find us on social media at Hustle Humbly Podcast. Don't forget to find all of the free resources at hustlehumblypodcast.com/resources.
See you next week.